All right, we've talked about Milgram and obedience to authority. Now we're going to take authority out of the equation and look at some other group dynamics here. So the first one is called social facilitation. This one's an easy one to explain with the example of home field advantage in sporting events. This is when one's performance increases because you're part of a group or you're being watched by thousands of fans around you. Okay, you're being watched by a group, and so you kind of rise to some expectations because you want to perform well in front of those fans. So home games is an excellent example. I know there's a chart in your book about home field advantage. In fact, I just took a look at a few websites about the NFL. They used completely different statistical analyses, but both sites found that every team in the NFL had a home field advantage of some sort. So this is a very common idea and something that has been proven statistically. Social loafing is the opposite of that. And unfortunately, we've all been a part of that group in school when one person kind of took the lead and maybe we were the ones that kind of hid within the group and didn't do as much work. Or maybe we were the ones that did all the work and it really annoyed us that other people were just loafing. So social loafing is a decrease in performance because you're part of a group. Social facilitation is an increase in performance because you're part of a group. Okay, we're not going to do this one. Next term is deindividuation. I think the book talks about the riots in England. Deindividuation is when you're in a big group or somehow you feel anonymous. Internet trolling down there in one of the examples is a good example. You feel anonymous, so you lose a sense of individuality and therefore responsibility. So you are more willing to do things that you would never otherwise do, but you don't believe you're ever going to get caught, or you're caught up in this huge group and your individual self is kind of taken out of the equation. Again, I think a crowd at a game is a good example. There are people that get involved in those crowds. The ref makes a questionable call and people go nuts. They go crazy. They start yelling things they would never yell. They might even hunt down the ref after the game, and we've heard plenty of crazy stories about that kind of stuff. Kind of that mob mentality. It's more than kind of. It's that mob mentality. You lose your individual self, and you're more willing to do things that you would never otherwise do. Again, I think internet trolling is an excellent example. You have people that hide behind their computer screens, say awful things, do awful things, and it's all because they feel like they're anonymous. Their individuality has been taken away. Deindividuation. Okay, there's a famous experiment called the Robbers Cave experiment. Before I explain this experiment, let's look at the term group polarization. And that's when people in a group have similar, not always identical views, but they have similar views, and you put them in a group and their views strengthen. So if you think about a globe, and you think about the poles of the globe, the groups become closer to their poles. Okay, so if I think a perfect example, a great example is a convention, a political convention, Democratic Republican convention. Okay, so over here you have the Republican convention starting, and you have people coming in, and there's some toward the middle of the line, right? So they're kind of the moderate Republicans. But you also have people in that group all over the place, where you have some that are very, very staunch conservatives up here toward the top, and everybody's kind of all over the place. Likewise, in a Democratic National Convention, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have your moderate Democrats, and then everybody all the way down, not outside the convention there, sorry, but you go all the way down to very, very, very super liberal, okay? Well, what ends up happening is you get into that convention, and now all of a sudden, everybody starts to kind of polarize on their thoughts, okay? So they'll move toward the poles. I know that bottom arrow doesn't look great. And so now what happens with group polarization is people's viewpoints tend to go toward the poles. It doesn't mean that everybody's becoming super progressive at the Democratic convention, and everybody's becoming super staunch conservative at the Republican, but their views are becoming much stronger because they're in a group. So that's group polarization. All right. So that being said, I always thought that visual will always really help me remember group polarization, so I wanted to do that with you guys. Okay, so what happened in the Robbers Cave experiment is they took two groups of kids. They were 11 and 12-year-olds, and they actually set it up so that they were at kind of like a summer camp. They had no idea the other group existed for several days. They did a lot of team building, a lot of bonding. So the kids, they became the Eagles and the Rattlers. They gave themselves names. They were teams. Then they brought the two groups together, and they set up competitions, baseball games, touch football, different types of games. These kids started to hate each other. The competition, they had already built these teams. They got together, started having these competitions, and it got to the point where they were having fistfights. One of the groups raided the other group's cabins in the evening one time and stole a bunch of stuff. I mean, it got really, really ugly. So what ended up happening is the experimenters then set it up so that there were what were called superordinate goals. There were goals that transcended the group conflicts. So one of the things they did is they intentionally broke the water tower. And the kids had to come together to figure out how to fix the water tower. The goal of fixing the water tower superseded everything else. They got the food truck stuck, and the kids had to pull the food truck out together. So now all of a sudden there are superordinate goals, and these kids that absolutely hated each other just a couple of days before, now were coming together and working together. And that's also called mutual interdependence. This sense that individuals or groups need each other in order to achieve common goals. I've always had the fun example. I've always said, I can't wait till we get an alien invasion here on Earth. And the reason being is all bets are out the window as far as all of our conflicts. If we have aliens invading us, we're all going to band together and try to defeat the aliens. So that superordinate goal would help us unify. To be a little bit on the sad side here, it's one of the things that I thought COVID would do. I thought COVID would actually bring people together and give us that superordinate goal. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that at all. And it'll be interesting to see what psychology does with research about the times that you're living in right now, because there's a lot of psychological occurrences happening that researchers are going to definitely be looking at. Okay, I will talk for 7:45. I'll be done and let Mr. Woodard take it from here.